What is up, everybody? In this video, I want to talk about the Nintendo Switch OLED model and whether or not it's worth its price tag of $350. Now, the Switch OLED, it's been out for a while, it's not a new model, but I wanted to make this video because there is a fair amount of choice when it comes to handheld consoles nowadays. So the question of which one to buy can be a little bit tricky. Now, I'm just going to give you my take up front and then we can get into some of the reasons. I basically think that the Switch OLED, it's the best console that you can buy. And let me just clarify that. When I say best, I'm not just talking about other handheld consoles. So, you might have heard of, for example, the Steam Deck or maybe, other gaming phones from ROG, for example. But I actually think that the Switch OLED isn't just a better buy than those other handheld consoles, but also even other consoles like the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X. And there are basically three reasons for that. So the first is the design. The second is the overall gaming experience that you get on the Switch OLED. And then lastly, there is the actual game library that you get access to through buying a Nintendo console. So let's talk about each of those three reasons, and then when we wrap up, I'll talk a little bit about whether or not it's worth buying the OLED model of the Nintendo Switch or the classic model, which is a little bit cheaper. So let's start off by talking about the design. And I just think that one of the best things about the Switch OLED is that the overall aesthetic is just so much better, I think, than almost any handheld console that you can get your hands on. You've got this really nice matte white finish over each of the joycons, each of those two controllers at the sides. And then if you look at the rest of the controller, most of it is this kind of matte black finish on each of the buttons and the control sticks. You do have a little bit of a glossy matte finish as well on the front, on that little border just around the screen. And that is, maybe not ideal because you're more likely to get fingerprints on that part of the console. But I just think overall, the look of it is just really cool. And I also think it just looks really premium. I mean, if you look at the back, most of that matte black casing is actually made of plastic, which may not feel the most high quality. But what's really nice is just underneath, you've got this metal kickstand. And the metal, it just adds that extra something to the overall build quality. And another good thing about the kickstand is that it's an improvement on the Nintendo Switch Classic model, which had a way smaller kickstand to it, and it just meant that the console could fall over really easily. So basically, love the design. I think it's great for a handheld console. I think also the ports and buttons are really well situated on the Switch OLED, so let's just take a little bit of a closer look. Now, if you take a look at the front, you've got essentially, your standard control buttons on the left and right. You've got your directional buttons on the left-hand side, and then you've got one of your control sticks just above. On the right-hand side, you actually have a reverse layout. So the control stick is just below the, the X, Y, B, A buttons. Now, I was a little bit worried about that reverse layout on either side. I felt, I was worried, is that gonna feel a little bit awkward? Is it gonna be weird and just difficult to handle? I have to say, I actually haven't found that at all. It's been really fine. And when I've been playing, it's felt comfortable. I haven't ever really thought, I wish that the left control stick was a little bit lower or the other way around. So there's no problem there. I also just think that the controls, they feel really good to handle. So for example, like if you press individual buttons, then you'll feel that they feel like plastic, but also with a little bit of a kind of rubber coat on the top, which just adds that little bit of more premium feel to it, I think. I also think there's a good amount of resistance to each of the joysticks, so they don't feel really loose, but they also don't have this kind of excess amount of stiffness to them, so that feels great. And also the back buttons, they're really light to the touch. They don't require much force at all to press down, but I actually still think that, they feel really good. They don't feel too flimsy or, really poorly made at all. So yeah, the controls, they feel really good. There's also a good number of buttons on the console, not just on the controllers themselves on either side. So for example, if you take a look at the top, you've got your power button on the left-hand side, two volume buttons right next to it. You've got your speakers a little bit towards the right, and then you've got your headphone jack and your game card as well. So that's all great. And then bottom, really, really simple. You've just got your USB-C port, and that's for charging and connecting to other devices. And just one other thing to mention as well, you do have these two buttons just at the back of each of the controllers, which you can press down and then just, really neatly and easily slide off each of the Joy-Cons, and then you can, use the Switch in a different mode for playing as well. So yeah, I basically think all the buttons and the accessibility, it's just really easy to use and just feels really good. When it comes to customization, that's where this device really starts to shine, I think. So let's just go through all of the different modes and options that you actually get with the Switch OLED. So first of all, you can have it in handheld mode where you're just playing with the console with each of the Joy-Cons at the side attached as normal. Then you can detach each of the Joy-Cons and you can use the kickstand to prop up the screen in the middle so you can play, either just single player with the controllers attached to a little plastic holder that comes with the Switch OLED, or you can use the two controllers at the side for multiplayer, so you and one of your friends can have one each, for example, and then just play together. And then you can also dock the Switch OLED and connect it to a TV in order to just give you a bigger display. Now, some of that is not exclusive to the Switch OLED. So for example, like the Steam Deck, you can have that in desktop mode. So you can play handheld, or you can play different games attached to a PC monitor or a TV. But the thing is, what you get with the Switch OLED is more than that, because you get the opportunity to play multiplayer just by buying the device without any additional controllers and accessories. And I just think that, the amount of customization you get with it is fantastic. It really just sets the whole thing apart from the competition. By the way, just a side note, if you are enjoying this video, I would massively appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. Okay, that all sounds pretty good, but you're probably wondering, what is it actually like to play games on the Switch OLED? Gameplay experience is one of the most important things when it comes to buying a gaming console. So how does that work in this case? Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the display. Now, on any good gaming display, you're basically looking for three different things. You want sharp image, you want good image quality, so things like rich and vibrant colors, and you also want smooth motion so that the graphics and the gameplay just feels really seamless and you don't have any choppy action going on. Now, basically, the Switch OLED gives you all of those things, and there's really little cause to complain. Now, as far as image sharpness is concerned, you're getting a resolution with the Switch OLED of 1280 by 720. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot. Full HD is 1080p, for example, and 4K is way higher. But here's the thing, you're getting a display with the Switch OLED which is 7 inches diagonally. You're getting basically a pixel density of about 210 pixels per inch. And just to put that into context, that's not that far behind some of the modern MacBook Pro models that you can get. So it's a really crisp image that you do get while playing games, which looks great. Unfortunately, the Switch OLED does only go up to 1080p when you have it in docked mode, and so it's connected to a TV, which, on bigger displays is not gonna look necessarily the best. But it's still fine. And for somebody like myself, it's really not a concern at all, because more than 90% of the time I'm playing in handheld mode, which I think it just gives a great experience anyway. Now, when it comes to image quality, one of the things that you're getting with the Switch OLED is, the clue is in the name, you're getting an OLED display, which really makes images much more vibrant. So what does OLED mean? Basically, it refers to a display in which every single individual pixel can turn off completely rather than just dim when you want a very dark color. The color black, when you get black on the display, it's gonna look really black. It's not just gonna look dark gray like on other kinds of displays, like LCDs, for example. And that gives you this really rich and beautiful level of contrast between the lightest and the darkest parts of the screen. So it makes images look really, really great. And that is a big improvement over the Switch Classic, which did not come with an OLED screen. And then there's that third thing, which is smooth motion. So the frame rate, which is how many times the image on the screen can refresh per second, is 60 Hertz on this device. Now, 60 as a refresh rate, I think is absolutely fine for a handheld console, especially with the Nintendo Switch games, often which, I don't find that you really need that much more than 60 Hertz. It would be nice to go up even higher and have even smoother motion, something like, approaching maybe 100 or 120 Hertz. But it's just not something that I feel like I'm desperately missing whenever I'm using this device. So basically, I think that, gameplay feels really smooth on the Switch OLED. I mean, I don't really ever notice that many moments as well in which the frame rate suddenly drops and moves down that much from 60 Hertz. It generally feels pretty consistent. There are some moments maybe in some titles in which you can notice that when there's a lot going on screen, things can become a little choppy, but that almost never happens for me. I hardly ever notice it, so not really any complaints there. The bottom line is that the Switch OLED comes with one of the best displays on any handheld console nowadays, and I don't think you can really go wrong with it. Now, the last main reason why I would recommend buying a Nintendo Switch, if you are thinking of getting a handheld console, is that library of games that you get access to. Now, yeah, I mean, this does kind of come down to personal preference to some extent. If you like a lot of exclusive titles which are available, for example, on the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, that's gonna steer you in a different direction. But I do ultimately find that when I'm playing a lot of PlayStation or Xbox games, a lot of them are also compatible, or a lot of them are made for Windows as well. And so it kind of just feels like I'm playing like a worse version of a gaming PC, because often the performance is not going to be as good. It's just generally going to be, I think, a less smooth experience than if you are playing titles on a Windows PC. Now, with the Nintendo Switch, that point just doesn't really apply, because you're not going to be playing a lot of Nintendo games. Like, you're not going to be playing Super Smash Bros., for example, on your Windows PC. So this is really where you're going to go. You're going to want to get a Nintendo Switch to play those types of games. One other question you're gonna be thinking about is this gonna be worth buying over the classic Nintendo Switch in order to get that OLED display and, you know, for the slightly different design and so forth? And I would say personally, if you don't already have a Nintendo Classic, I think that buying the Nintendo Switch OLED is absolutely worth it. If you do already have a classic Nintendo Switch, it's probably not worth spending an extra, $350 to buy this device, because you're not really gonna get that much more of an upgrade, unless you can find a way of selling your old device for a decent price. But if you're a first-time buyer of a Nintendo Switch, absolutely recommend this. I just don't think that you can go wrong with it. If you like this video, then don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe so you can keep up to date with all of the latest news on the channel. If you want to see my review of my favorite iPad case, click here. And if you want to see the best productivity enhancement features of Apple devices, click here. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you in the next one.